system at the Hillsborough County Jail that records all phone calls made by people who are in the jail.
That is correct.
Approximately how many of those have you listened to?
In reference to this case, or just in reference to in my career?
Well, no, in reference to Mr. Morris.
I don't know, 10, 20.
Okay, and each of those is approximately 20 minutes long?
Yes.
And did you have occasion to obtain videotapes of visitations where Mr. Morris was visited at the jail?
That is correct.
Okay, and when a person is visited at the Hillsborough County Jail, how does that visitation occur? Are they meeting with that person one-on-one in person, or are they separated in some way?
They're separated, and when you're watching it, it's video recorded, so as an investigator, I'm watching the person that's incarcerated, the person that's visiting them, so you get a video and also the audio of their dialogue.
Okay. So you can actually see them talking, you can see their face?
That is correct.
All right. And in those video visitations, could you see Mr. Morris's face?
Yes.
All right. And you could see him speaking?
Yes.
And then you could see in the split screen, the other side of the screen, the people he was visiting with?
That is correct.
So when the person who's visiting is they're actually at the Hillsborough County Jail, but they're in separate rooms, and this is kind of like a closed circuit feed of some kind?
That is correct.
All right. And approximately how many of those have you seen and listened to?
$10 to $20.
Okay. And each of those is at least 20 minutes long, 15 to 20 minutes long?
Yes.
Did you become familiar with Mr. Morris's voice?
Yes.
Okay. And would you be able to recognize it if you heard it?
Yes.
And do you consider his voice to be distinctive?
Yes.
States B, the dash cam video, a portion of which we just saw, looking at Mr. Alfred Thompson walking up the sidewalk. You've indicated that you have spent quite a bit of time watching that and listening to it.
Correct. Watched it, listened to it.
Spent a lot of time with it.
Dissected the dialogue,
Okay.
made a verbatim transcript.
Did you hear in that video, and all those times you've listened and watched it, did you hear the passenger speaking to Officer Curtis when he first went to the car, which we just saw? The portion where he's asking him what his name is and his date of birth and his age.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you also view the portion at the end of the video, or when I say the end, right before the end of Officer Curtis and Officer Kokav's lives, where they approach the car and tell the passenger, or Officer Curtis does, that he has a warrant and ask him about that?
That is correct. And again, as I stated earlier, when David Curtis asked Mr. Morris to come out of the vehicle, that video again was sliced, and I've observed every frame of broken down in milliseconds of that whole of the murder of the two officers.
Did you recognize the voice of the front seat passenger who ended up getting out of the car and shooting the officers?
Objection, Your Honor. Your approach.
just to bring us back in context, I believe I've already asked you if you heard the voice of the front seat passenger when he spoke with Officer Curtis, both initially when
You did.
Officer Curtis was on the driver's side and then right before the shootings happened on the passenger side.
You did, yes, sir.
And you have.
And I have,
Okay, and you've heard that many times.
multiple times.
Okay. Did you recognize the voice of the front seat passenger?
Yes, I did.
Who did you recognize that to be?
Dontae Morris,
Okay.
gentleman right
Is there any doubt in your mind about that?
there. No doubt.
You have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
We have approached the judge. Mr. Duran, you indicated earlier that you spent a substantial amount of time viewing that video,
Yes, I did.
dissecting it, slowing it down. You said particularly a minute ago that you were dissecting and stopping and looking at the video image of the shooter.
Correct, and had photographs
Okay.
fabricated from that.
How many hours did you commit to that, or have you committed to that?
It's hard to put it in hours. I don't know, 20 hours.
That would be an approximation.
Yeah, probably more, but it's a lot.
20 or probably more.
More than I.
Okay. You had contact with Mr. Morris to take buccal swabs from him, correct?
Yes.
In-person contact with him?
Yes.
Okay. You had contact with him the night he was arrested?
Yes.
All right. You were with him at least part of the way during the transport from the Tampa Police Department to the Hillsborough County Jail?
No.
Okay. Did you walk him out of the Tampa Police Department?
Yes.
Okay, and that's what I was speaking about.
Okay.
Based on your familiarity with Mr. Morris's image, and you've seen his photographic image several times, his known photographic image, and your familiarity with his video, could you identify the video image of the shooter in the video?
Yes.
Okay. And who could you identify the video image of the shooter in the video as?
Dontae Rashawn Morris.
Tender the witness, Your Honor.
Questions, Counsel?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, sir.
Mr. Poole.
In your role as lead detective, Mr. Duran was essentially an administrative one. Would that be fair to say?
That's part of it, yes, sir.
Okay. And so a large part of your efforts was coordinating the efforts of other detectives
That is correct.
and other law enforcement officials.
Correct. Delegating task, yes, sir.
And so organizing things.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Harmon's previously asked you whether or not you committed substantial resources to this investigation. Of course, the answer is yes.
Yes.
All right, and you have a number of experts in-house at TPD. For example...
Well, I outsource,
Well, we'll get to that. But do you have experts in-house as well? Let's say latent fingerprint examiners in-house.
Yes, sir.
Okay. A crime scene technician is employed by the Tampa Police Department.
Correct.
Judge, could I ask counsel to speak up? I can't hear him.
Turn the microphone's turned away.
Okay. I'm trying to lean into the microphones. Just louder.
Very fine.
That works.
Yes. All right. So you both have Tampa Police Department officials in-house
Correct.
as experts.
As opposed to not having a firearms lab, so that's why we go to FDLE. So,
Right.
Yeah, yes.
You use both.
Certain things we can do, certain things we can't do in-house.
Was the investigation in this case, would you characterize it as extraordinary?
Yes.
Objection to vagueness, Judge?
Overruled. That's an answer. Move on.
Okay, the answer is yes.
Unfortunately, in my career, being in homicide, I investigate officers' deaths. This is the second one that I've investigated where 2 officers were killed at the same time. So it's, yeah.
All right. Great deal of resources committed to the investigation.
Yes.
Were you able to obtain fingerprints associated with Mr. Morris, closely associated with the persons of either Officer Kokap or Officer Curtis? And by that I mean, are you aware of any forensic link of fingerprint off, say, the smooth surface of a gun belt?
No.
Okay. For either officer?
No.
Okay. Aware of any footwear comparisons being generated that match known footwear of Mr. Morris to shoe impressions or footwear impressions at the scene?
No.
And you've testified now as to both your recognition of Mr. Morris's voice, your recognition of Mr. Morris's face. Is that correct?
I have.
Okay. Wouldn't it be fair to say, sir, that you have no specialized training of any sort as to recognizing a man's voice? Is that something you can train for?
No.
Okay.
I think it's
One man's opinion?
If I hear you talking on the other side of that door, and I'm on one side of the door, I know it. Based on our relationship, I've known you over the years, I would know specifically it was you as opposed to someone else.
All right. But that's not a matter of specialized training for law enforcement. That's just one man's opinion.
What's the question?
Whether he has any specialized training as a law enforcement officer to recognize a suspect's voice.
He's already asked that and answered it.
Okay. The answer was no.
Specialized training?
Right.
You know, in my career, you know, I've sat on numerous wiretaps where I knew a subject, you know, a bad guy, if you will, and I was monitoring his phone calls, and because I know this gentleman or this suspect, you know, and then I listen to his voice on phone calls, I know it's him talking. You know, you just become familiar. You know, I don't think there's any type of training that you need to become familiar with someone's voice, either it's familiar to you or not. I mean, everybody's distinctive in their tone, their, you know, just the way they speak.
But that's my point, sir. It's not something you can train for, right?
I don't believe so, no.
Can I have just a moment, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have no additional questions at this point now.
Can you redirect them?
Yes, sir. Let's talk about the gun belts these officers were wearing. Were these gun belts a smooth surface?
No,
Nylon, and woven nylon?
they were not smooth surface. They were woven nylon.
And that would not be conducive to the leaving of fingerprints, would it?
No.
Right. And footwear comparisons. There were no footprints of comparison quality found in the crime scene, were there?
No.
Right. And when you finally were able to apprehend and arrest the defendant, it was 4 days later, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about recognizing another human being's voice. He talked about training, counsel did when he was questioning you. Would you agree with me that your common experience as a human being would be your training?
Objection. Excuse me, sustained.
Yeah.
Raise your question.
Would your common experience as a human being in dealing with other people, speaking with other people, interviewing people, would that amount to training as far as being able to recognize someone's voice?
Yeah, that's how I was trying to answer the question, you know, is that based on my, you know, when you talk to somebody, you become familiar with them, you know, whether it be a coworker, you know, someone you meet on the street. Everybody's got a different dialect, everybody's different tone.
Mr. Durant, I hate to put you on the spot here. How old are you, sir?
55.
And how long have people been speaking to you?
55 years.
Okay. And how long have you been speaking to people? Since you're about 2 or 3?
2.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure.
All right. 2? I'm just kidding. You would agree with me, though, that having conversations, speaking with people, the more people you speak with, the better you get at recognizing voices?
Absolutely.
All right, now I'm going to talk about your law enforcement experience. You worked for the Tampa Police Department for over 30 years.
Yes, sir.
How many people do you think you interviewed in your career?
Thousands.
Okay. Have you ever conducted surveillance where you were relying upon voice identification, whether it was surveillance on a live mic, where either an undercover officer or a confidential informant was mic'd up, had a microphone on them, a secreted microphone, or you were listening to phone surveillance like through a wiretap?
Yes.
Okay. And have you done that on multiple occasions?
Multiple occasions.
And on those occasions, were you relying upon your ability to recognize those people's voices?
That is correct.
And I believe you said everybody is distinctive in their voice and tone.
I believe that.
You said that earlier on cross.
Yes, I did.
I've got nothing further, Your Honor.
Can this witness be released for subpoena, or do you need to remain under subpoena?
I'd ask that he remain under subpoena, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Duran, you're free to go about your business. You're still under subpoena. If they need you, they'll get a hold of you. Thank you.
Sure, Your Honor.
Please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state will call Dr. Kostowski.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this cause be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Right this way, sir.
Good morning. Go ahead, take a seat.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And again, please tell us your full name and then spell your first name and your last name.
My name is Leszek Krastowski. It's spelled Leszekrostowi.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Could you tell the jurors what you do for a living?
I'm a medical examiner at the Hillsborough County Medical Examiner Department.
Okay. And can you tell the jurors your education and work history?
I'm a medical doctor. I graduated from the medical school in Gdańsk, Poland in 1988. I worked then later as a pathologist. Then I relocated to the United States in 1995. I did pathology training in New York at Maimonides Medical Center in Brooklyn. Then I did surgical pathology fellowship also in New York. Then I did forensic pathology fellowship in Baltimore, Maryland. And then I worked as a medical examiner at first in Alabama, in Mobile, Alabama, at Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences as a state medical examiner. And in 2005, I relocated to Tampa, and I work here ever since as associate medical examiner. I'm board certified in fields of pathology and forensic pathology by the American Board of Pathology. I have a license to practice medicine in state of Florida, inactive licenses in Pennsylvania and Alabama. And, well, that's it.
Okay. And you are a medical doctor and MD?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you testified as an expert in the area of forensic pathology in the past?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how many times?
I don't know, 100, maybe more,
And how many autopsies have you performed in your career?
thousands.
Your Honor, I would tender Dr. Kostowski as an expert in the area of forensic pathology.
Any questions?
No questions, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Doctor, can you tell the jurors what the area of forensic pathology, what that area of medicine deals with? And if you need to talk about clinical, anatomic, or just basic pathology, please feel free to do so.
Thank you. Pathology is a branch of medicine which is a basic science in medicine. Its name is derived from two Greek words, pathos and logos. Pathos means to suffer, and logos is science, so it's science of suffering. Medicine, as you know, has very limited opportunities to examine something by experiment. You cannot experiment on people, so most of what we know in medicine is based on observation. And what you see in a given case, in a given patient, is you can compare to a single frame from a movie. These observations were put together over centuries, so we can now know how the disease or injury develops in the body. And this is what pathology deals with. A regular surgical pathologist, it's called surgical pathology because initially they were hired by departments of surgery. So surgical pathology, the hospital pathologists, these are people who are making diagnosis based on data from laboratory and from microscopic studies of the tissue. For example, if you have a tumor in the lung, the biopsy is taken and this is looked at by a pathologist who also conducts additional studies, and then he arrives with the diagnosis and also staging of the disease. Based on this diagnosis, the clinical doctor, like oncologist, can start treatment and treat you accordingly. Also, when a surgeon removes a tumor from a body, for example, he sends this to the Department of Pathology, and pathologist examines it to make sure that it was removed in its entirety, that there was nothing left in the body. And if it was, he calls back the surgeon who can extend the surgery. So that's basically what pathologists do. Pathologists also examine tissues in doing research, for example, how different medications act on the body and what is the result to the body and to the disease. Now, forensic pathology is one of the many sub-branches of pathology, and this deals with giving opinion regarding the cause and manner of death. So it's a legal branch of pathology. Now, the cause of death is injury or disease that initiates chain of events ending in someone's death. So, for example, if somebody gets shot but doesn't die and stays in a hospital, and 20 years later develops cancer due to irritation of the bladder due to indwelling catheter, because it has to be, the person needs to be catheterized. And then this cancer kills him, the cause of that still remains the gunshot wound. So it's a late sequelae of the gunshot wound. That's how the definition works. So any injury or disease that initiates these events leading to death, this is the cause of death, and it has to be the diagnosis. And as medical examiners, we are charged to give opinion as to cause and manner of death. That's our job.
Did you talk about manner of death?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's manner of death is just a classification of deaths into one of 5 categories for statistical purpose, basically. And we have homicide, which is death from hands of other person. We have natural, which is exclusively due to natural cause. We have accident due to an unforeseeable event. And we have suicide, which is killing self with intent to kill. And then we have undetermined, when we cannot assign this to other categories for some reason, lack of information or something like this.
Okay. And in those circumstances, under Florida statute, does the medical examiner have jurisdiction over that person or over their body?
That is correct. Our job here is regulated by Florida Statute Chapter 40611, and it exactly says which deaths have to be investigated by medical examiner, and it includes anything that is not natural, and also some natural deaths, sudden unexpected deaths in apparent good health, and also natural diseases which are of public interest. For example, some infectious diseases when the Department of Health needs to know because they have to take preventive action to avoid having some epidemics in a county.
Okay. So homicide falls under your jurisdiction?
That is correct, sir.
All right. Did you in this case, and I know we're dealing with 2 medical examiner cases. We have 2 victims in this case, Officer David Curtis and Officer Jeffrey Kokap. Were they both assigned individual and different medical examiner case numbers?
Yes, each is a different case number. Well, it happened to be my day when I was on duty, so I did examine both of these cases.
All right. I want to start with Officer David Curtis's autopsy.
Yes, sir.
Did you perform an autopsy on his body?
Yes, sir.
And when was that?
May I refer to my notes, please?
Yes, sir.
Now, the examination of Officer Curtis was performed on 30th June. External examination started at 13:10, and this was followed by internal that started at 13:40 hours.
So June 30th was the date?
That is correct, sir.
All right. Can you tell the jurors in an autopsy what that procedure consists of? You think you already kind of mentioned it there, but if you could just tell them what it consists of.
Autopsy means to see for oneself. Autopsy, I think it's from Greek too. This is a thorough examination performed on dead people, and it consists of three parts. The external examination, which is examination of external body surfaces for presence of injuries or diseases, and this is followed by internal examination, which usually includes three body cavities, head, chest, and abdomen, can be extended if necessary. And this is followed by additional studies, and additional studies include, it can include anything that is needed to arrive at diagnosis, but routinely on every single case we do toxicological examination of samples of body fluids and tissues, and we do histological examination of samples of tissues.
Okay. Are bodies measured in any way before autopsy or during the
Yes.
process of the autopsy? Was Officer Curtis's body measured?
Yes, sir.
Could you give his measurements, and I believe it's expressed in length versus height?
Length, yes. I mean, the bodies are lying on a stretcher, so they are measured, and we refer to it as length, body length. His body length was 5 feet and 11 inches, and the weight was 230 pounds.
Were you able to come to an opinion as to the cause of death of Officer David Curtis?
Yes, sir. Officer Curtis died due to gunshot wound of head with penetration of skull and brain, and the manner of death was homicide.
Doctor, I want to show you some photographs and ask you if you can explain what's shown in those photographs. Now, I'm going to publish first states F1. And just if you can, tell me if you can see this clear enough. If you can't, I'm going to have you step down and stand on the other side of the screen. Okay?
Absolutely.
You know, it'd probably be better to do that anyway, so that way you can point to what we're talking about. If you can step down and just stand over here on the other side of the screen. If you need to bring your file with you, feel free to do that. There's a chair over here we can set things down on it if you need to.
Thank you.
Just keep your voice up, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I stand over here?
Anywhere you need to, yeah.
Thank you.
Do you need a chair?
No, I think I'll be fine. Thank you, sir.
This is states F1, marked for identification.
What you see here is
Yes, sir.
the face of Officer Curtis, and well, what you see here is hematomas in the orbital areas. This is due to fractures in the front part of the skull above the iris and orbital plates. And this causes usually hemorrhages in the orbital adipose tissue that then extend into the eyelids. Another Features here would be an intravenous catheter in the supplemental vein, and this is the end of the surgical incision that extends vertically from the neck to the pubic region. And the reason for this is because this gentleman was an organ donor. So that's suturing up to the herniation, and there was following his wishes and wishes of his family, wishes were performed for transplantations to save lives of other people.
Now, the collection of organs in that case, were those vascular organs?
Actually, no, this was after procurement of vascular organs, and this incision at the end of which you see here, it was 58 centimeters long, so it extended all the way to the abdomen, and the organs that were procured for transplantations included the heart, the great vessels, the lungs, liver with gallbladder and biliary tract, and the kidneys, along with adrenal glands.
All right. Now, did the harvesting of those organs from Officer Curtis, did that in any way interfere or impair your ability to determine the cause of death in this case?
No, sir.
All right. I'm going to show you States F4. Can you tell the jurors what we're looking at in this photograph?
This is the back of his head, and what you see is that in the left temporoparietal region right here, there is a gunshot wound, and it does have the characteristics of an entrance gunshot wound at close range, in intermediate range to be exact.
I'm going to try to move this in a little bit. Now, in this case, an examination of the external aspect of this wound, was the area around the wound affected in any way, as in cleaning or shaving or anything like that?
Well, this is actually a so-called dirty picture.
Right.
Before
right.
we do anything.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. After this photo was taken, was there some procedure done around that wound?
Yes, sir. The scalp hair was shaved around the wound to expose the skin and expose the features of the wound.
Okay. Showing you States F5. Does that photograph show what you were just describing?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And what?
This whole area is shaved.
Why is that done, doctor?
Because otherwise it's not possible to determine the features of the wound around in the surrounding skin. What you see here is gunpowder stippling that indicates that you are dealing with so-called intermediate range of firing. I can explain if you...
Well, I'm going to ask you in a minute a little more detail about that. Yes. But needless to say, the hair is shaved away to reveal the wound so you can examine it properly?
That's correct.
Okay. States F6. That's just a more close-up view of the wound?
That is correct. There is a perforation of skin in the center, surrounded by marginal abrasion, and all this is gunpowder stippling or gunpowder tattooing.
Okay. Now, if you can, describe for the jurors what that means, stippling or tattooing, and how it's caused.
Well, I will use the microphone. When the bullet enters the skin, the body, it bends the skin inward like this. Now, there is a movement of the bullet parallel to the skin surface and the margins, and this abrades the skin. And this is the typical characteristic of the entrance gunshot wound. When you then look at the front of the skin, what you will see will be a punched out perforation in the center with the tissue deficit surrounded by the marginal abrasion. So that tells you that you are dealing with entrance wound, not exit wound. Because, with exit, the situation is reversed, like this. So there is no movement on the skin surface, and there will be no abrasion on the margin of the wound. Now, when the bullet leaves the muzzle of the gun, it is followed by burning and unburned particles of the gunpowder and by black smoke, which is a product of burning of the gunpowder. Now, for a typical handgun, the particles of gunpowder can travel as far as 2 feet from the muzzle, up to 2 feet. It depends on the type of ammunition, type of gun, length of barrel, and many other variables. But the rule of thumb is that it's up to 2 feet for gunpowder and up to 6 inches for the smoke. If the smoke is deposited on the target, you can tell that the muzzle was less than 6 inches from it. If you see the tattooing made by the gunpowder, which is embedded into the dermis, that tells you that the target was less than 2 feet from the end of the muzzle of the gun. And this is the case here. All these little abrasions are actually pieces of the gunpowder embedded into the skin, and they are pretty confluent. So it was close. It was more than 6 inches, I would say.
Because there's no sooting?
There is no soot deposited, but there is gunpowder, so it was less than 2 feet. And in case like this, we call it intermediate range firing. And of course, to have this small detail, you would have to request the examination by the firearms examiner. And what they do, they have to fire the very same gun with the very same type of ammunition in a controlled environment, measuring the distances from the target to the muzzle. And then they have the pattern of the gunpowder stippling and soot deposition, and they can compare it with this and tell you with high precision what was the distance of fire. I don't know if this was done in this case. What we do in the examiner's office, we do pictures like this with the ruler, and that allows, well, because you have the scale, it's a metric scale here, and it allows for a comparison of the test firing with the actual wound.
Was there an exit wound in this case?
No, sir.
Can you tell the jurors what structures of Officer Curtis's body were that the bullet passed through in its path?
Well, it passed through the skin, subcutaneous tissue, ganglion, neurosis, and skull, causing multiple fractures in dura mater and the brain. And then there were fractures on the other side of the skull, and then there was a hemorrhage over the head, and the bullet was recovered from this case. It was actually in 2 fragments. It's separated. The jacket was at the entrance wound right here, by the bone, and the lead collar was in the brain, was in the brain on the right side. The direction of the wound was from left to right, and it did not have any discernible deviation upwards, downwards, back to front, front to back, but it was left to right, as you can tell. And other injuries were included, associated injuries with the gunshot wound included hemorrhage in the subdural space, and of course multiple hemorrhages and contusions in the brain. that injury was lethal.
Okay. If I understand you right, well, let me just ask you. The bullet, in this case, cut a path through the victim's head, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, but there were other associated injuries outside of that wound path?
That's correct.
That bullet path?
It's like this. When you shoot a gun into a gelatin block and you make the high-speed pictures of this, what you see here is that initially the path of destruction is pretty large. It's a big hole. The pressure can reach 200 atmospheres. It's very high. For comparison, in your tire, you have 2 atmospheres in a car. So it's really big area affected by this blast. And we call it temporary cavity. And of course, later, the tissue comes back to its previous form due to the elasticity, but you still can trace a hole through it, which will be smaller than, and this we call permanent cavity.
The permanent wound path or cavity?
That's correct.
So this temporary wound path is something that occurs at the time the bullet enters the head. The tissues around that permanent wound path expand and change and are injured to some extent. You've talked about some of them, and then they move back because of elasticity of the tissue?
That's correct.
Is that what accounts for the injuries to Officer Curtis's eyes, those hemorrhages we saw over his eyes?
This is due to fractures in the bone that is over the eyes, in the anterior cranial fossa.
Right. And were those fractures caused by that shock wave?
That is correct.
By the 200 atmospheres of pressure?
That is correct. I mean, I don't know if there was 200 in this particular case. I'm
Right.
just saying that it might reach 200 atmospheres. It all depends on the velocity and weight of the projectile. The extent of the wound depends on the kinetic energy of the projectile, and kinetic energy of the projectile depends on the weight and velocity squared. So a rifle, for example, has, because of the high velocity of the projectile, will cause far greater damage than the handgun.
All right. In this case, this wound I think you already told us this, but was this a survivable wound?
No, sir.
Once it was inflicted, would any kind of medical care have saved Officer Curtis?
No, sir.
Now, you talked about some items that were removed from Officer Curtis's head, and I want to show you states F8. Is that the jacket that you were talking about, the bullet jacket that was recovered from his head?
Sir.
And
What you see is it's empty inside. It used to be lead in here. That's a copper jacket that surrounds the lead, and it's open like this because it was hollow point ammunition.
Okay.
And it just opens like this, and in this particular case, it's fragmented, so the lead kept going in the brain, even though the jacket was lead.
So that was a hollow point bullet or hollow point ammunition, and that's designed to expand?
Yes, sir.
And deposit energy quicker, I guess, or deposit it in a different way than a solid projectile would?
So the wounds, I cannot tell the difference between the wound from a round nose projectile and the hollow point projectile, usually. As a medical examiner, there is no really big difference in the appearance of the wound, but the round nose projectiles, they don't stop, they keep going. So it can go through a wall, next wall, a person, another person, and so on. The hollow point ammunition, because of this mushrooming, stops sooner. And this is why it's used, for example, by law enforcement, because you're less likely to cause collateral damage by this.
Okay. States F9. Is this the inverse of what we just saw? That's
Yes,
the pocket where the bullet was contained, and then is this the bottom of the jacket?
that is correct.
Okay. States F11.
That is the lead core from the same projectile. This was removed from the right parietal lobe of the brain, and what you see here, this is just, you took this cap off the jacket, and the inside is the lead thing. It's also expanded.
So this was found on the opposite side of the head from the entrance wound, and the jacket was found just inside of the head near the entrance wound?
That's correct.
Is that something you commonly see, where jackets are separated from projectiles like that?
Yes, it depends on the type of ammunition. Some of them separate more easily than others.
States F12, is that just a photograph of both of these next to each other?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, doctor, with this type of wound, well, first of all, were you able to determine the direction of the permanent wound path of the bullet?
Yes, it was from left to right, but I cannot be any more exact than this. There was no discernible deviation to the, upwards or downwards from the perspective from.
And when you say left to right, what is that in reference to?
It's in reference to the standard anatomical position, meaning the person standing straight with the palms of hands facing forward.
So like
and
this?
that's because it makes the forearm bones parallel. So it's a typical drawing from the diagram.
Like this?
That is correct.
Just facing forward?
Right. And of course left means the left side of the person, not the spectator like me.
Right. It'd be their left arm or their left side of their body.
That is correct.
Okay. So you said it was left to right with no deviation backwards or forwards, or did it have deviation?
Well, I cannot say that there was deviation because the injury of the brain was to such extent that I couldn't trace exact permanent cavity.
Okay.
You see, this gentleman was a healthy, athletic individual with very strong heart, and heart has this ability to beat automatically. You cannot live without your brain, without central nervous system, but heart can be removed from the body and it still beats because it has an automatic function. And this is what happened here. This gentleman was brain dead when he was taken to the hospital. However, he still had circulation. And this is why he could have been the vascular organ donor.
Okay. Because the heart was still beating, he still had circulation in his body?
That's correct.
Okay. You may have already told us this, but what in this case, what is the actual mechanism of death? What actually causes death with a wound like this?
Well, it's a destruction in the central nervous system. And, this is due to this blast effect. So the injury that is usually the most lethal, the most lethal part of the injury would be the contusion in the brainstem. Because these are the brainstem hosts that play the centers which are of utmost importance, like vasomotor center, like respiratory center. You can't breathe. Your vessels do not have a capacity when it relaxes. You don't have enough blood to fill your own vascular system. It has to have some tone. So, usually the injury to the brainstem is what matters. You can live theoretically without the frontal lobes, in permanent vegetative state. It's a philosophical question, I guess, whether it's life or not. But it's possible. Now, without brainstem, no life is possible.
Okay. States F3. What does that show us? And I'll just back it out so you can see the rest of the body.
That's a contusion on the arm, on the inner surface of the arm. It's a superficial injury.
Okay. And states F2, just a close-up of that.
Same thing,
Okay.
over the bruise.
Could that have been caused by someone trying to grab a hold of Officer Curtis's arm or pick him up or move his body?
That's a reasonable possibility.
I want to go to the other victim now, Officer Jeffrey Kokab, and your file on that. Yes, sir.
Members of the jury, you all have been sitting for about an hour and 45 minutes. It's a bit long. Let's go ahead and take our morning recess. Please don't discuss the case break. We'll bring back in about 20 minutes. If you need longer, that's perfectly okay.
All rise.
Okay, our juries can all be seated. We'll be in recess till 10:40. Ready to go. Dr. Wasowski, you're free to go about your business. Be back in about 15, 20 minutes. We'll start up again. Thank you. You will? Hey, how are you? Good to see you, buddy. Good. Great.